Hey there guys and gals, this is Chris with Ignited by Nature and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be comparing two compact ultralight spotters head to head, the Kowa TSN-55S and the Swarovski Optik STC. Both spotters are ultra lightweight and compact premium spotters that pack a punch. These spotters are built for the backcountry hunter or serious birder who wants to shave some weight but doesn't want to sacrifice on any clarity. I've been using both these scopes extensively, and in this video, I'm going to help you decide which one belongs in your pack. So let's get into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hey. Emotional trauma with a prima donna, gasping when she see the commas, laughing to conceal the monsters. I feel like Kanye when he lost his Donda. When my father left me, you were there to heal the pain that conquered. I never pay you back for what that meant to me. Some scars just fade physically, but never leave mentally. It's where people spiritually connected turn to enemies, and memories turn to villain origin accessories. And I'm the bad guy yet again. Spent so much time trying to find who the victim is. It's probably both of us, but neither one is giving in. So here we go again, throwing punches at each other's ribs. Gunshots sting like a buckshot. The pain hits deep.
To start things off, I want to go ahead and talk about some of the key features of these optics. And we'll go ahead and kick things off with the TSN-55S. Now, if we take a closer look at the TSN-55S, and the S just stands for straight angled spotting scope, and then the TSN-55A would be the angled spotting scope. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the 55S. We have a 55mm objective lens here, and that's going to give you a lot of bright light transmission, and it's really a great option for a compact spotter. The 56mm objective of the STC is obviously going to be a tiny bit brighter, but overall, they're pretty comparable, and you're really splitting hairs when you're looking at these two optics. If we go to the other end here on the eyepiece section, we have the TE11WZ2 eyepiece, which is the fixed eyepiece. So this eyepiece cannot be removed. And Kowa really stepped it up here. And this new optic actually competes really well with the Swarovski STC. This eyepiece is really nice, and you have 4 different adjustment points that allows for 17mm of eye relief. This eyepiece is a 17 to 40 power eyepiece, so you have plenty of zoom range. And as far as the exit pupil goes, you have a 3.2mm exit pupil at 17 power, and then when you twist it up to 40 power, you have a 1.4mm exit pupil. Now, as far as the close focusing distance, you actually have 9.2 feet. So if you're a birder, you can really get up close to a tree or a bird that's up in a tree and really get a clear image at a close range. As far as the field of view goes, you have 192 feet at 17 power and 105 feet at 40 power. You have actually the widest field of view out of all the compact spotters with the Kowa TSN-55S. When it comes to overall length, Kowa actually has this spotter listed at 10.6 inches. I actually measured it out to see how much it actually measured out to, and I measured 10 and 13/16 of an inch. That actually works out to be 10.8 inches, so it's a little bit over the advertised length. As far as the overall weight goes, Kowa has this spotter listed at 33.8 ounces, and then when I weighed it out on my scale, without the eye cups, this scope actually weighed 34.14 ounces, so a little bit over the advertised weight. And then when I added the eye cups into the overall weight, it actually weighed 34.96 ounces. So it was a little bit over the advertised weight, but not by much. As far as the overall light transmission goes, for the Kowa TSN-55S, this is actually unknown. If we take a look at the front of the STC, we'll see that the objective lens is actually 56mm versus 55mm. This gives it a slight edge as far as its low light capability, but you're really splitting hairs there. The next thing I wanted to kind of cover when it comes to the Swarovski Optik STC is the eyepiece. The eyepiece is a fluid eyepiece, so you can just move that eyepiece up and down and kind of adjust it anywhere. You don't actually have to click it into place. There's no actual setting, so you can fine tune it to your eye. And I think that's a really nice feature. It has 20mm of total eye relief versus 17mm. Anywhere in between 15 and 20 is kind of that sweet spot, especially if you're an eyeglass wearer and you kind of want to be in between there. Anything above or below is going to be overkill or not enough, but 15 to 20 is right in that sweet spot. The next thing we'll talk about is the actual exit pupil. So at 17 power, you actually have a slight advantage over the Kowa TSN-55S because you have that 56 millimeter objective lens. At 17 power, you have a 3.4 millimeter exit pupil versus a 3.2 millimeter exit pupil. You also have a 17 to 40 zoom range and a fixed eyepiece, just like the 55S. And then as far as the close focusing distance goes, you actually have a close focusing distance of 11.2 feet versus 9.2 feet. So if you're a birder, that extra 2 feet might actually make a difference, and you might want to go with the Kowa TSN-55S. And then as far as field of view goes, the Swarovski Optik has a field of view of 186 feet at 1,000 yards. And then when you move up to 40 power, it has a field of view of 102 feet at 1,000 yards. On their website, they have it advertised as 11.2 inches. Now, when I went and measured it out, it actually measured in a little bit lower. So I measured it out and it was 11.13 inches or 11 2/16 of an inch. And then as far as weight goes, it was kind of the same thing. On their website, they had it advertised as 34.6 ounces. And then when I weighed it out on my scale, it actually weighed 34.64 ounces. Now, when you add their eye cups in, it actually comes in a little bit heavier, 35.66 ounces. So in that regards, if you were to pack the eye cups, it would be a little bit heavier. The Swarovski Optik also has a new compatible ARCA plate that it comes with that gives you that extra stability that it didn't have before. So that's a nice added feature. And then lastly, the overall light transmission of this optic is 88%. Okay, so now that we finished up looking at the key features, let's go ahead and look at some real-world examples and comparisons. In this first example, we're actually using a telephone line to look at color fringing and edge clarity. As you can see, both optics perform great in this situation. We're looking at this power line at 105 yards, and you can really make out any issues if there were any, and I honestly didn't really see any issues between the two optics. Now, zooming into 40 power, you'll see that the Swarovski STC took a little bit more time to focus in on, but overall, both had excellent image quality, and I didn't see any fringing along the edges or around the power line. In this next image, we're looking at some deer at 1,000 yards, and this is a great image because it shows you the difference in color, and it also shows you a little bit of the field of view difference. I feel like the Kowa TSN-55S has a taller and wider field of view overall, and you can kind of see that here, even though these aren't aligned exactly. In this next image, we're looking at some elk at 643 yards, and it's snowing. And here, once again, you can see the difference in color. And as you'll see, the overall color of the STC is a little bit warmer, and the Kowa is more neutral. In this next image here, you can really see the pop of the Swaros. It's a little bit more warm, as we talked about. And overall, I just like the image quality of the Swaro a little better, especially when it's zoomed in at 40 power. And you can see that here, that it's a little bit better. In this next image, once again, you'll see the warm pop of the Swaro and the neutral feel of the Kowa. Both images are great, and it's really hard to discern a difference. In this next image here, we're looking at some elk at 523 yards. And once again, you can see that the Kowa is a little bit more neutral of a color, but it also seems a little bit brighter in this image. In this next image, we're actually looking at these elk after sunset, and as you can see, it's really hard to discern a difference. I would say at this point, they're pretty equal. In this last image, the Kowa TSN-55S is clearly a little bit darker, but both have about the same image quality and resolution. Now, obviously, these optics are going to look a little bit better in a low light situation in real life, actually looking at them through the optic, but this just gives you an idea of how they perform in low light. Okay, so now that we've got a chance to look at some real world footage and do some comparisons, let's go ahead and look at the overall image quality and look at some of the key differences between these two optics. With the 55S, you have a little bit better edge clarity, and then you also have kind of a more neutral color, whereas the Swarovski Optik has a more slightly warm color that really makes things pop. And I actually prefer that slightly warm color over the slightly neutral color. And then also, after you get past 35 power, I feel like the Swarovski is a tiny bit clearer. And then as far as overall brightness in low light situations, the Swarovski Optik has a slight edge over the Kowa. And then as far as field of view goes, the TSN-55S is just a little bit better there. On the low end, you have 6 feet field of view difference, and on the high end, you have 3 feet field of view difference. Now, taking a look at both of them, you'll see that they obviously look different. They're both straight angled spotters, but they have a different build to them, right? This is smooth and slender. It's more compact, and it's honestly easier to get in a pack. This has a different shape because it has the fine focus knob. So you have your coarse adjustment and then your fine adjustment. This is really nice to use, especially when you're zoomed in at a high magnification. It's a more stable image overall. The barrel focus on this is very smooth as well. So that's honestly a personal preference thing to me. I like the slenderness and the slender shape of this better than the bulkiness of this, and this is a little bit more bulky. And then another cool thing that sets the Kowa TSN-55S apart from the Swarovski STC is this sunshade here. So this is a cool added feature, and I actually really like this. And another cool feature that's actually added on the sunshade is this little peep sight here, which can be used to actually find a target out in the distance. And then another cool feature that the Swarovski STC has over the Kowa TSN-55S is that the STC actually has a rubber armor over it. So this protects it when you drop it, and it also is nice when the weather is cold or hot. The magnesium body of the TSN-55S can get hot or cold. They did add some rubber armor on the top here where the eyepiece is, which is kind of what you're handling the most. So that is a nice added feature here. But overall, if you drop this thing, it's going to get dinged versus the rubber armor. This housing can be replaced. Another thing I want to take a look at and compare is the actual mounting surface for a tripod adapter on these scopes. The TSN-55S has an overall larger mounting surface, and it's just set up better for mounting an Arca plate on. And then one cool little feature that Swaro added is when you take off the objective cover, it actually fits into the eye cup. And then on the Kowa side, you have a tethered ocular eyepiece cover, but the objective cover does not fit with that. So you gotta put that in your pocket or put it somewhere you're not gonna lose it. The next thing I wanna talk about is the overall price and the resale value of both these scopes. The TSN-55S on one hand is a tiny bit cheaper. Back when the TSN-554 was a thing, it was quite a bit cheaper, but with the new updates to the TSN-55S, the price point is $2,499 on average, and that's brand new. And then in general, the Swarovski STC is going to have a little bit better of a resale value, but you're going to pay a little bit more. The overall retail value, if you're going to buy this brand new, is $2,699. So you're paying about $200 more for this scope. Now, just from my personal experience of reselling Swarovski and Kowa, I would say that the overall resale value for Swarovski Optik is better. I just sell these easier. Everyone knows about Swarovski. Their branding and their marketing, they've just done a great job. And it's like buying a Mercedes or a BMW or a Toyota. Actually, a Toyota would be a better reference. I feel like Toyotas hold their resale value way better than any other vehicle. And I would say that the Swarovski Optik, any kind of Swarovski Optik compares to a Toyota, right? On the other end, Kowa has a great resale value as well, but I don't think it's as good as the Swarovski Optik STC or any of the other Swarovski Optik products, and that's because they're a newer company. So we kind of talked about everything now, so let's go ahead and wrap things up with the pros and cons, and we'll start off once again with the Kowa Promenade TSN-55S. First off, the pro of the TSN-55S is that it has a solid piece of fluorite crystal glass, and it's grown in-house in a lab in Japan by Kowa, and the fluorite crystal glass just gives it a superior overall image quality as far as edge-to-edge clarity goes. And in some cases, some people might like that more neutral, true-to-life color. I feel like it's a little bit cooler of a color than the Swarovski Optik STC, so that's something to consider. And then also the Kowa TSN-55S is a 1/2 ounce lighter. You also have the dual focus knob and the fine tuning adjustment of the fine focus knob. Another cool added feature in a Pro would be that you have this sunshade and you also have this peep sight to find your target. I thought that was really cool. You also have the new TE11WZ2 eyepiece, which gives you XD glass and a really nice viewing experience. And then if you're a birder, you also have a closer focusing distance of 9.2 feet. And then lastly, it has a wider field of view than the STC. And then as far as cons go with the 55S, you actually have a bulkier overall design. It doesn't come with any rubber armor. You also only have a 55mm objective lens versus a 56mm objective lens, which makes it a little less bright in those low light situations. And then lastly, as far as cons go for the Kowa, I would say that the resale value is not as great as the Swarovski STC. Okay, so now let's talk about the pros and cons of the STC. As far as pros go, you have a slender and slim body profile. It fits really nicely into a pack. You also have rubber armor that covers the whole body. So if you drop it or if you're glassing in hot and cold conditions, you're not going to have to worry about the optic being too cold or hot. It also has very good clarity overall, and it has a warmer image that makes things really pop, especially like deer and elk. I feel like they just pop a little bit better because they contrast really well. You also have slightly better clarity above 35 power, I would say, over the Kowa. And then as far as pros go, you also have a 56mm objective lens. So you're getting a little bit brighter of an image in those low light situations because you have a 3.4mm exit pupil at 17 power versus a 3.2mm exit pupil. And then lastly, you also have a better resale value. And then as far as cons go for the STC, it's a 1/2 ounce heavier. You also don't have the dual focus knob, so you don't get that precision focus ability that you have with the Kowa. And then as far as cons go with field of view, the STC has a slightly more narrow field of view versus the TSN-55S, so you might want to consider that as well. And then the STC is also more expensive. Also, the close focusing distance on the STC is 11.2 feet versus 9.2 feet. So here comes the $1 million question. Which scope is right for you? I would say if you prefer better edge clarity, you want a little bit wider field of view, a lighter scope overall by 1/2 ounce, and you just prioritize a more neutral, true to life color. I would say it's a little bit more cool than the Swaro. I would go with the fluorite crystal glass Kowa TSN-55S. It's an excellent scope, and you're saving $200 with something that is truly comparable. Now, if you like the more warmer pop, but this is also true to life in color, I think, too. I just like, for some reason, the pop of the Swaros. Then I would go with the Swaro. You also have a more slender and a more rugged design. So I think overall, if you're looking for something that's more sleek and you want a better, brighter image in low light situations, I would go with the Swarovski STC. But you're going to lose out in field of view by just a hair, and you're going to lose out in edge clarity. I'm really trying to play devil's advocate here because honestly, they're both great scopes. And like I said, you're really splitting hairs to find the differences. It all comes down to what you prefer ergonomically and in the overall build quality. Thanks for watching. And remember, stay connected to the wild. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel for more outdoor gear reviews and adventures. I'd really appreciate it. Drop a comment below. What optic would you use? Would you go Swarovski or Kowa? Also, what are you running out in the field? I'd love to hear about this. Leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. Once again, my name is Chris with Ignited by Nature, and until next time, guys and gals.